Hello everyone, this is Tessin haugabrook. I'm coming to talk to you today about a very close and important subject that is very dear to my heart and very close. Well, it's my reality every day. And this is just for other people who are dealing with family members and loved ones who are battling the day-to-day battle of schizophrenia. It is truly a battle on both sides, to both the person dealing with the disorder and the loved ones who are, working with the family member, or your loved one, whether they be your boyfriend, sister, brother, cousin, friend, close relative, someone you're associated with. It's a disorder that really requires determination, both on the person dealing with it and on the loved one's part. Basic fundamentals and understandings of schizophrenia. Schizophrenia comes from a German word which means split. A lot of people associate schizophrenia and say, oh, it's bipolar, because the German root of schizophrenia meaning split. Actually, split in the German context, which is the root of the word, refers to the split sides of the brain, and how they interact, or in this situation, in case there's a lack of interaction or a lack of network function. Schizophrenia affects about 2 million Americans, over 2 million Americans, and it's more common around young adults and upward in age, even though it's very, very much so found in children as well. But with children, the warning signs, you can notice them a bit, they're harder to see. As with children, communication and certain cognitive abilities are not as easily displayed, and you don't usually expect them to be at certain levels like you would an adult, which is why it's usually easier to spot in adults, since a certain level is expected with their cognitive powers and responsive ability. With any disorder, it's just a matter of diagnosing it, establishing what type, and finding the right treatment and having the right motivation and support. I can't tell you how hard it's been for me. I have a loved one who has schizophrenia. He is a vet, ex-Marine, and it just really destroyed his world and his family's world. And I mean, it started to destroy mine. And let me just say to anybody who has family, I understand. And the reason I'm making this video is because it's really for the families of those who have a loved one with schizophrenia, and you feel like you're about to lose your mind. Up until, I'd say, a couple of weeks ago, that's how maybe a month ago, I felt like I was losing my mind. This disorder really drains those who are around someone and caring for them and dealing with the constant mood swings, the misperceptions with reality, and just the entire package that comes with this disorder. First of all, the disorder is totally organic. It's a physical disorder. They're not demonically possessed. Since I've been going with my loved one to some of the evaluations and through the psychiatric therapy, I've seen other people. Excuse me, pardon me, I'm about to sneeze. Excuse me, pardon me. I've spoken to individuals and have heard from other people who are suffering from the disorder saying that, they would go to church every Sunday and pray that God remove these demons from their mind, and would have people come and pray for them and try to be exorcised. And when they were, living with family, they would have priests come over and try to exorcise a demonic force out of them. These people are not possessed. This is a mental disorder. If you want to do your research, spiritual possession is like night and day. A person, goes from every day walking around to all of a sudden, you'll see an onset of symptoms where they're not themselves. They're announcing more than one voice. Actually, being demonically possessed is more associated with, or can be, or has been in the past. Not saying it's valid, but it is associated with multiple personality disorder, not people suffering from bipolar or schizophrenia. Schizophrenia is actually a break with reality, a form of psychosis where a person can no longer determine, or cannot determine, depending on how long the psychosis has taken place, that distinction between what is real and what is not. That may come in the form of hallucinations, delusions, or just voices. There are two types of schizophrenia. There are two said sides of schizophrenia, two categories. One which is called positive and negative. There's what's called negative systems, as I just said, and positive symptoms, symptoms, not systems. The positive symptoms are symptoms that are symptoms displayed by people with schizophrenia that normal people do not have on a day-to-day basis uncontrollably. And these are, like I said, hallucinations and delusions. Also, disorganized speech. They can't put their sentences together all the time, or sometimes they'll put their sentences together and it won't apply to the conversation they're having with you. Then you have the negative symptoms, and these are just altogether a lack of normal human behavior that are just totally obscene and make no logical sense to the outside world or surrounding world. And those are loss of will, apathy. People who are lethargic. They can tend to be or seem to be lazy, but really it's a lack of will. You don't want to do anything. There's no motivation, no desire. You lose your sense of communicating with others. Social withdrawal, which is you don't want to go out, you don't want to speak to people, you have no need for human interaction, which causes you to become a pariah. You stick to yourself. You're your own, you're your own private entity. You no longer need interaction, or you possibly never have needed it, depending again on how long you've had the psychosis. Another one is loss of speech, which is both on the negative and the positive side of the symptoms, as well as lack of pleasure, which is the same as saying absence of joy or happiness. And that's where they usually tie in the bipolar with the schizophrenia, because they're like, oh, well, you're not happy anymore, you've lost your will to live, you're not excited, you're irritable. But that is totally different from bipolar. Well, it's similar, but there is a difference, because someone with bipolar might not necessarily hear voices. They don't have hallucinations. They don't have the delusions, from reality. A person with bipolar could be like myself. Bipolar is distinguished by an onset, it's a manic depressive type of disorder in which a person experiences, extreme mood swings, going from happy to extremely depressed. And that is the difference really between bipolar and schizophrenia. Bipolar is a manic depressive state in which in a huge ladder of emotional mood swings occur on a day-to-day basis for no reasons, and it's chemically, neurologically and chemical type of thing going on in the brain that can affect that. But with schizophrenia, this is hallucinations and delusions, and like I said, delusions from reality. The disorder really affects the network of the brain. The brain itself sends, nerve impulses, and allows us to respond to situations, to take control of situations, to react to situations, really to create certain situations for ourselves. People with this disorder don't really have that cognitive grasp. They have the ability, but it's like sitting inside of a machine and not knowing which buttons to press. Or not even not knowing which buttons to press, but rather the buttons are pressing themselves at different times. If a man is shouting at me on the street, and I'm a a person, a normal, well, a person without schizophrenia, and a person shouting me in the streets, I'm going to apply logic. Okay, do I know this person? Why are they shouting? They're probably not shouting at me. So do I need to respond? Are they a threat? These are things that everyday people who don't have the disorder would think. And, you'll, of course, measure the level of threat to yourself before you respond. A person with schizophrenia will see that person, and in their world, that person might be having a different kind of conversation altogether with themselves. And the person with schizophrenia might want to join in with them. Or schizophrenia, like I said, the delusions, the voices. The voices cause you to hear different things. Sometimes you have people with schizophrenia that hear a voice, and they might hear two voices. Maybe the voices are telling them to do things, and that's another part of schizophrenia. The voices that they hear in their minds either give commands, or they can give heavy opinions about that person. Imagine hearing voices in your mind either always telling you what to do, always tearing you down and giving you bad feedback about yourself, or having conversations in between each other. So those are the three main things that a person with schizophrenia experiences when it comes to the voices. The voices either are talking to each other, and the person with the schizophrenia is sitting back listening to these two figmented entities speaking. And what happens is when you yourself hear two people talking and you know that you yourself are included in the conversation, at some point you might want to respond. This is what's happening when the person with schizophrenia is responding to a conversation that's not taking place. And I had to learn that because sometimes I would sit there and listen. I would listen to right now, the person I'm dealing with right now, he has schizophrenia, and he has really, really, really bad symptoms when, it comes to hearing the voices, that delusional part, that aspect. And he'll hear the voices, and when he hears them, his is responsive to the conversations. Some people have paranoid schizophrenia, and the voice is giving them commands. And that can be very dangerous because the voice might give them a command to hurt themselves or hurt other people. This is the case in point with, I remember a gentleman, I'm trying to recall his name, good grief, I think it was Wessinger. I don't want to say his name incorrectly, but basically, was it Russell Weston Jr.? He, went into a federal grounds and, fired off rounds, and it was a very tragic ending. He ended up getting killed. But he was paranoid schizophrenic. There are voices, inside. The voices, like I told you, they'll either give you commands. They're either telling you, oh, you're stupid, you're ugly, you're dumb, you're fat. Or they're, like I said, the commands, get up. A person with schizophrenia might be sitting down sometimes and all of a sudden just jump up. And you're thinking to yourself, what the hell is going on? That voice, or those voices, have been going back and forth so long. Imagine having someone in your ear going, get up, get up, get up, get up right now, get up right now, get up, get up, get up. And all of a sudden, it's so close in your ear, you feel like they're going to hit you. You're going to jump up. It's a natural human response. You want to appease the opposing side so that you can get some relief, or so that the pressure or the fear is no longer there. And that's usually what happens with these voices. They give commands, they give opinions, and which can cause depression. Schizophrenia can bring on different type, an onset of depression because the voices might be tearing the person down constantly. Could you imagine how depressing it is to hear voices all day, every day, and to you they're real. And then you have the people who are in the real realm coming up to you and trying to talk to you. And that's another thing. A person with schizophrenia might not always want to engage. It's not that they're ignoring you. And what you'll find is if you have a loved one with schizophrenia and you're talking to them, and you feel like they're ignoring you, and you think, okay, why are you, he's not listening, she's not listening, or when I talk to them, they're not listening. They're not ignoring you. It's that sometimes those voices are going, and those voices are so much louder than your voice that they don't even have time to block theirs out. So really they're sitting there doing like this. And then sometimes they'll come back and they'll answer you, probably about maybe a couple of seconds after you ask the question. Is because they kind of have forced their way out of that conversation to get back to you. And it's a lot of practice. People with schizophrenia, they're amazing individuals because the power to offset their own symptoms and try to interact with the real world is so severely monumental, and it's such a hard thing to do. And to the families dealing with it, I know it's so straining. I have met with friends who have their family members who have come back from war or who just have the disorder, period. And, they do certain things and they think, oh, at first I thought she was obsessive compulsive, or I thought that maybe he was bipolar, and then they, actually went to a psychiatrist and had the person diagnosed, and they said, no, they're schizophrenic. There are so many things that tail onto the disorder. The most common symptoms with of course, schizophrenia, like I said, are hearing the voices. But there's also a lot of things that come with hearing the voices that affect the person's day-to-day as well. And there are certain things that you can do to help. If you are a family member or a loved one who has someone with schizophrenia, certain things that I've learned how to do, and this is before they got medications. Now, this is where you guys need to listen up. I'm not telling you what to do, but I'm telling you what worked for me. Especially for people, insurances is crazy, and then sometimes it's so hard to get a person to get seen because people with schizophrenia don't think that they have a problem 9 times out of 10. I hate to say it, but how they say crazy people don't think they're crazy. And not to say they're crazy, but people with mental disorders don't think they have mental disorders because, truth be said, most people walking around the planet have some sort of a mental disorder. It's just the level in which the disorder, is set that distinguishes, everyday people from those who need extra care and maybe a medication to assist them with day-to-day living. Back on my point, there are some things that you can do to help. If you are a family member, I'm just saying to you, I understand. I know what it's like having those migraines out of nowhere. If you ever have headaches and all of a sudden you're having these migraines, you can't sleep, you're stressed out, you're in school, and all of a sudden your grades are failing because you're trying to keep them in the house, you're having to take online courses, or your children are being neglected because you're taking care of your husband, or you're taking care of your wife, or you've got a child who you have to isolate from the rest of your children because they have this. I understand. And I'm telling you, there are some things you can do. First of all, seek help immediately. This is not something you can deal with on your own. There are groups, there are, of course, centers that have day programs for both children and adults. And there are loads of medication that have revolutionized the treatment of this it's more than a social disorder, this mental disorder. And a lot of those drugs were started, just a bit of information, back in 1952. So the drugs have not been around for a while. Schizophrenics were usually, in the old times, they were thrown in padded cells because there was nothing they could do. And a lot of the drugs that were most popular that were introduced in the 1952 were some of them like clozapine, risperidone, quetiapine, and olanzapine, I believe, as well. I'm saying them wrong, but those are just, I think, 4 of the main ones that came up, and those revolutionized treatment of schizophrenia. There is a injection that is very, very, very helpful. If you have a person who is very, they are totally deep into their psychosis, and they totally do not want to get treatment. They every time you try to talk about a doctor or something like that, they just totally get upset, or they have a flare-up, is what I call it, a flare-up, a psychotic flare-up, where they just get really angry, really upset, and they'll start marching around and even fighting things that aren't there, fighting figmented figures that are not really there. You can call places. I know in DC there's CPEP. which is, the emergency psychotic mental mobile service. They'll come to your home and they will come and, if needed, medicate the person and also extract them from the environment and take them to an emergency center where psychotic care is provided, and also, if needed, FD12 them and send them to a hospital where they can receive proper diagnoses and further ongoing treatment, and then release them to a program where they'll be further treated and receive long-term care, of course with your support, you being the family member. Back to those things that you can do until you get these services. You always always remember the key things with a person with schizophrenia. It's a day-to-day thing. Every day is not going to be the same. I will tell you that a person with schizophrenia may have a totally clear day where they don't seem to have one flare-up, where they might seem to just maybe talk to themselves. It depends on the level. Everyone's different. Some people have severe paranoid schizophrenia where they are just totally in need of supervision and care 24 hours a day. And then you have some people who have schizophrenia where it's the flare-ups are really, really bad. And then you have some people, they just have streamlined schizophrenia. It's just constant. It never goes too bad, but it can. But it's controlled. And I've encountered all of them. The best thing to do is to remember, know your person's pattern, your family member's pattern. Start writing down things that they do. If when they wake up in the morning, you see them talking to themselves, or you seem to hear them acknowledging certain things, or if they have a habit, when they get upset, know what things make them upset. This is going to lead to what's called a flare-up, or what's going to have them really go crazy, or really go off, or get really upset to where you can't control it, and all you can do is let them go. A lot of times people who have had schizophrenia for a long time, they actually are aware. They don't acknowledge they have a problem, but they're aware something's going on and I need to walk it off. I need to be by myself, and they'll leave the room, and then all of a sudden you hear in the other room someone's going crazy. Don't necessarily go in that room after them and follow them. If you are in the room and they're going off, do not argue with them. Do not be sarcastic, because what can happen is in their world, their voices are telling them, sometimes what happens is someone who's schizophrenic, they're in the middle, and two of the voices are having an argument. And the argument might be about that person. And so they're listening to them both going, oh, he's stupid, he's dumb, he's fat, he's an idiot, and why are you talking? Why are you talking? And all the person dealing with schizophrenia wants to do is say, shut up. And what happens is he might respond to this conversation. Now remember, this is all happening in their psyche. You're just sitting there probably watching Golden Girls or some talk show or writing down. And all you do is sit back and listen. Listen to the conversations that take place. Listen to how they respond. That'll usually tell you what's going on in that conversation. That'll let you know the dialect that's taking place. If they're responding in a way where they're laughing, usually that means that one of the voices they're hearing is saying a joke, or maybe making fun of you, and you just gotta kind of, let it go. Let it go. Don't be totally responsive. Let them get these emotions out. Let them talk these emotions out. The best thing to do with someone with schizophrenic is to not try to restrict or control them, or try to tell them that something is wrong when they're having a flare-up. That will make it worse. So what I said you could do, know their patterns. Write down when they get upset what things they say. Write down what they do. Write down and time the flare-ups. If they have one day where they just get mad and it takes 15 minutes for them to calm down, write that down. And write down what happened before that 15-minute flare-up, and note that to yourself. And then the next day, if something else happens and it flares up and it takes them 5 minutes to calm down, write that down. These behaviors are telling you how to approach things, and also how to offset these responses. I found myself usually when it came to dealing with things with my loved one, I would find, okay, all right, I know that if he's getting upset over this and he doesn't like to wait, waiting sets him off for a long time. And that's with any schizophrenic. You cannot let a schizophrenic person sit in a room or a house all day with nothing to do. Being idle will cause them to have the worst type of flare-ups, because that's when the voices are free to do whatever they want. And the voices just go crazy. When there's silence, That's when they start really having a full-on, speech. And they just say exactly what they feel. They start making the person feel bad, or they start giving the person commands. And that's what you really need to establish. Now, if you're already with, a psychiatrist or a psychologist, any type of mental counselor, they will be evaluating this for you. But like I said, I dealt with a person who for years was resistant to treatment. They were resistant to going, anything was wrong. And this is why it's important. If you have someone that's resistant to treatment or that's resistant to going to have any evaluation done, this is why it's important for you to know some of these guidelines and have these things to help you do your day-to-day living so you can cope. Because if you go crazy and if you go to a mess, you're no good to anyone. And I remember literally having panic attacks and being so stressed out where I thought I was starting to hear voices, because I would constantly look at him and see him engaged in these conversations that weren't there. And it's only, it's a part of, it's human nature for us to adapt. And that's what you have to be careful. You don't want to adapt to a schizophrenic's pattern. You want to be in control. And by being in control, you have to be relaxed. When they have a flare-up, sit down. Don't stand up and walk around. The worst thing you do with a person who's having a flare-up is follow them around, be in their face. No, you sit down and you be in a part of the room where they can see where you are, they can see that you are not a threat, and that you are quiet. This lets them know, okay, Tessin's sitting down, Tessin's not talking. So that means it's these two voices. The argument isn't between me, these two voices, and Tessin. It's these two voices. So I can deal with these two voices. This is what they're thinking. If you start talking and you start responding, going, why are you screaming? Be quiet. Calm down. Shut up. You're acting crazy. Then you become a part of that argument. And believe it or not, those voices are internally responding to you. And they're telling that person in the middle, they're going, oh, why is he talking to us? This is between us. And now he's stupid. And he's trying to get on you. And he's da-da-da-da. And then all of a sudden you become a part of that argument. And now that person includes you as one of the problem voices. Okay? And so you don't want to do that. You want to remain a neutral entity. You want to be someone that draws them back. A part of that drawing back starts when they wake up in the morning. When a person wakes up in the morning, you want to do what I call beat the voices. For a person who hears voices a lot, I mean, all schizophrenics hear voices. Whether it's some describe it as a loud echo that, can go down to a tiny whisper. Some describe it as a constant murmuring, a constant chit-chatting, or a constant conversation directed at them, or just someone talking to them. Children who have schizophrenia, it's a little bit different. They do it with imaginary friends. But the difference between a normal child's imaginary friend and a child who has schizophrenia's imaginary friends, a normal child's imaginary friend, the child usually controls what happens to a certain extent, this imaginary friend. When they're lonely, the imaginary friend manifests. And they're playing with them. This is why normal girls have tea parties with imaginary friends. Boys will usually throw their action figures at the wall and pretend that, something has crushed it. With a child with schizophrenia, they're full on talking and having arguments with this person, or these imaginary friends are telling them to do things that are harmful, or they are making them upset. A regular child's imaginary friend doesn't make the child upset. It doesn't cause them stress. That is the difference between children who are dealing with schizophrenia. Their imaginary friends will make them cry, or make them angry, or make them pick up the scissors and go and try to stab the family dog, or make them go and throw the remote at the television. Whereas a normal everyday child who has a normal cognitive presence without schizophrenia disorder, their playmate is there to comfort them. You see, their imaginary playmate is a source of a friendship. They are an internal source of acknowledgement. It is a positive reinforcement that is created from their inner selves, okay? And they are responding to a positive internal stimuli. Back to the concepts and the ways of dealing with the schizophrenia. I mean, it goes on. I could go on for days, but I mean, I want you all to remember the basics. Like I said, catching that in the morning. Beat the voices in the morning. You talk to them when they first wake up. Greet them. Good morning. Hey, honey, how you doing? Or if it's your brother, what's up, man? How you doing this morning? Beat the voices. That gives them a touch on the reality world. And what happens is, even if those voices start talking to them, because they're going to hear them, they still know that, okay, I'm here, and there's a real person that's rooting me in the reality. And that kind of gives them a guide throughout the day. Now, when they start out with the voices, that makes it harder for them to distinguish what's real and what's not. If you wake up every day with a person, every day, and go to sleep with a person, you get used to that person. You start to believe that the things that that person does is acceptable. You become accustomed to that person. You look for that person. And when that person's not there, you think something's wrong. That is a concept and an aspect of reality. And that's what happens with these voices. You want to take control or take control in being a part of the correct reality by making yourself known, because those voices are going to make their presence known. When they start waking up, they might wake up hearing the conversation between those entities that aren't really there, or they might wake up and hear you say something first and then slowly hear the buzzing of those voices come around, and then hallucinating. That's another thing, seeing things that aren't there. You want to be careful with, letting them get into certain things as far as television shows. I cannot let my loved one watch rap videos. Rap videos, I mean, I'm so sorry, and this is not to anybody. I love rap music. I love all musics. But you got to remember you're dealing with a person with a mental disorder, okay? And certain influence can affect how they respond. Remember, their cognitive ability, it's there, but it's not in their control. The buttons are simultaneously being pressed for different reasons, or usually for none. And what happens is, if they're watching Barney, in their mind, they might think, okay, the dinosaur's walking across the screen. And all of a sudden, Barney might walk across them in the living room. So you might be watching Barney thinking, oh, that's cute. And all of a sudden, they're doing like this, because they might have seen Baby Bop and Barney literally walk across the floor. And it's scaring the hell out of them. So you have to be careful what you let them watch. And this comes from knowing, again, your loved one's pattern and what level they are at and what they're operating on. You know if they can watch cartoons. Usually a person with schizophrenia can watch cartoons. But letting them watch horror movies and letting them watch sci-fi and letting them watch, rap, listen to rap music, especially gangster rap, I'm telling you, don't let a person, especially someone who's paranoid schizophrenic, that is a huge no-no. You're messing with your life. Especially if someone is listening to gangster rap or acid rock, it can drive the voices to the roof. And all of a sudden, those voices become stimulated by that. Those hallucinations become stimulated by that. And the brain goes, oh, well, this rap song is talking about, I just killed someone, shot them, and I'm going to make a lot of money. I'm a gangster. Now, when you watch something, perception causes you to have interest in it. When you watch American Idol, everyday normal people think, wow, that could be me. Oh, that's really cool. Oh, wow. And you sing along. You feel a part of it. In the back of your mind, you feel like somehow you are connected to that. Because why? It's created to make you feel like you are a part. Your mind connects it. But there's a certain cap. The receptors in your mind say, you're not there. You're not on stage. You're at home. So don't sing too loud. Or, don't sing, the entire song because you really don't know how to sing that well. Or don't think that you need to bow at the end of singing because you're not performing. You're watching the performance. See, there's no cap with people with schizophrenia. Those receptors aren't, keeping those thought patterns and processing under control. So they're going to watch the show and they're going to sing the song full out. They can hear the band like it's there. And they're going to bow when it's done because they are hearing the applause of the audience like they're there. And they might literally go walk off out of the house thinking they're walking off stage and walk outside looking for a car to get into to drive back to the hotel. Because their mind has carried them away. And same thing goes with that gangster music and those horror movies. Those horror movies, if they see someone killing them in a horror movie, in their mind, the same way you saw Baby Bop walk across your living room, they might see Jason with an axe or a chainsaw running across your room in the middle of the night. And you might turn into Jason. And they might be scared from you. Or they might think Jason's trying to kill you. And they're trying to pick you up and run around. And you're trying to figure out what's going on. These are the delusions. And these are things you have to be careful with. You almost have to become a parent, whether it's, a child or a person who is an adult. You have to be aware of what's going on, especially when they're in your care. You have to watch things that are uplifting. Be suggestive. Don't be controlling. People with schizophrenia, again, usually don't think they have a problem. They don't want to be told what to do, but you can be suggestive. You can be helpful. You can say, why don't we watch this together and make sure it's something that's not, dangerous or something that is, that incites anger or that promotes violence, and that's what I had to do, and it was very hard for me, especially because my loved one loves rap music. I mean, hardcore gangster rap music. Okay, and they're, like I said, they're an ex-Marine. Okay, and I mean, he could shoot the flies off a bloody fruit fly, 50 yards away, you know what I mean? So that was something that I had to learn the hard way, of course. And so this is what you need to understand as well. Beating the voices in the morning and throughout the day. Keep a constant conversation with that person. Talk to them. They may not seem like they're not listening. It's just that they're listening to a lot. Be a calm voice. Be the voice that draws them back. Talk to them and keep them interested in things that they like to do. Don't let them be idle. I don't care if it's a bloody coloring book or, a puzzle, a word puzzle, or, a board game that they like. Find what they like to do and activate them in it. Be careful with computers. Usually people with schizophrenia who have, especially paranoid schizophrenia, they'll go right to YouTube. And that is not always a good thing. I'm not putting YouTube down. YouTube is great, and all that stuff. But just watch them on YouTube, because make sure they monitor, because there's a lot of things on YouTube that can help them. But you need to make sure that you're watching what they watch on YouTube, because there are some videos that can incite and, motivate them to act the wrong way. But then there are certain things on YouTube, like there's certain shows that they can watch that are really great that can help them calm down. There are certain videos made by people, that are funny, that can make them laugh. These are things that you can monitor. YouTube and all these other things, they have so many great things that you can utilize, but you have to be aware and you have to be in control so that you're making sure that you don't cause yourself unnecessary anguish because they are having a very bad flare-up from watching a video about some boy kicking a dude in the face and he's beating them up, on World Star Hip Hop or something like that, because they usually might act it out again because they're going to think, oh, I'm in the fight, and this imaginary boy's on the floor, and he's trying to stab me. Let me kick him. So all of a sudden, they're fighting a boy that's not there, and they might really be, crushing your Xbox, because the Xbox is that boy. Or they might get up and start fighting the dog because they think the dog is a Wolverine that's coming to the house and is trying to kill them because they've been just watching some, horrible horror movie on some channel or some movie. It's very important that you are aware of, what they're watching, what they're listening to. These things will help you, and they will help them. And when they start to take the medication, it gets better. And sometimes you can allow them, to do more. Pardon me, I'm sorry. Allow them to do more. But until they are diagnosed properly and medicated, take these steps, and even so after, because it's a road to recovery. It's an everyday step. Just like someone, with a drinking problem, someone with a drug problem, someone with, who can, keep themselves to themselves, a fornicator, whatever, everybody are eating disorders. This is a disorder of the mind, and this is something that they cannot control. Okay, I mean, the disorders are all the same in that a person has to make a choice to get help. Yes, schizophrenics can choose, okay, I'm going to try to go along with this and get help. But unlike the other disorders, it's something that's taking place in the brain, and they cannot grab it and say, I'm going to do this on my own. Like with all the disorders, you need help. Schizophrenia, creates, like I said, a delusional state. And I already told you how to try to combat those things. Another thing as well is dealing with how they affect your relationships. Now, it's horrible when you have a child that has schizophrenia. It's terrible when you have a loved one, brother or sister, but it is hell, torture, when you have a partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, husband, wife that are dealing with the disorder. And that's what I've had to go through. And I'm speaking to everyone out there, whether it's your boyfriend, family, friend, or member. Excuse me, I have a dog who is acting like he is quite schizophrenic. I don't know what he's barking at. Relax. Knowing their guide points, knowing their patterns of behavior, knowing what excites them and what gets them going, and knowing how you work, balancing yourself. Another thing, take time for yourself. It's the hardest thing to do, because what I learned, I was always thinking when I started having those really bad headaches and those migraines and I started getting those tension knots on my neck, out of nowhere I felt like I had a child. When I was at work, okay, I gotta get home on time because I don't want him to get upset. Oh, I can't leave him here this long because he might flip out. I can't go to this barber on this day. They're packed in there. Oh, it's too many people. Let me go on another time when there's not a lot of people so we can get his haircut where he's alone, in case he goes off. Oh, can't go to church today. He's having a bad day. Don't want him to flare up and scare the congregation. These are things that drive a normal person insane because your entire life is total entropy. It's put on hold, it's stopped, it's flipped upside down and turned inside out. And that is very stressful for yourself. And you have to give yourself time. And by doing this, you're thinking, okay, so how the hell am I going to give myself time? Put them out in the streets, leave them in the house to go crazy? No, give yourself time. What you need to do is get yourself involved in groups. The only way you're going to get time is by getting yourself involved in a treatment plan. If you have an adult loved one that is in need of care, there are day programs out there where it's 3 to 4 days a week or 3 days a week, and then there's some that are full 5 days a week. If you have a family member who is also totally aware and that person is comfortable with it. Now make sure that your loved one is comfortable with this other person and they are totally aware and they know what the stress is like. Maybe you two can alternate times and just say to the loved one that's dealing with the schizophrenia, we're going to go visit auntie or grandma or brother, and coordinate that time with your brother and say, I just want 3 hours, or I want to go get a massage, or I just want a day or 6 hours or whatever, and can you be with him for this time? And that is such a help because you need to renew your mind and make sure that you're refreshed, because I will tell you, you can start to develop symptoms of psychosis, psychotic breaks, when you are around someone who have these issues long enough and you are not getting a break from them. You can start to, exhibit those same symptoms. You can start to have daymares, which are nightmares during the day, or another form of delusions, have sitting there and all of a sudden you think you're hearing something because you're thinking, she might start screaming out of nowhere. He might start screaming out of nowhere. Or you're so used to hearing her talk between these voices, you might start to think you're starting to hear the voices. And that's dangerous. You have to separate yourself. And you need to have your own therapeutic times with yourself. You need to speak with someone yourself. I always tell every person who's dealing with someone with a mental disorder or a form of psychosis, you need to have a therapist as well. You need someone to talk to. Because any human being who does not talk to someone, after a while, you will speak to yourself. And after a while, the voices will answer back. So that's very important for you to understand. Take care of yourself so that you can take better care of your loved ones. Remember my steps. I know they've been quite sporadic and spread out through this, but I hope it offers some sort of a clarity and some sort of a help to those dealing with it. I'll have loads of more videos. If you have any questions, ask me, because I work in the medical field, and I've been dealing with people with mental disorders for a long time. I can answer any question you give me. I would do, and if needed, I'll do the more research on it, and I will answer them in videos for you. Any questions you have, whatever you're dealing with, bipolar, schizophrenia, any types of depression, just ask, and I'll do my best to do my research and come up with some solutions and some possible answers. But always go to your doctor. Always speak to a psychiatrist. I'm just giving you my what's worked for me, my experiences, and from my standpoint of having lived with it and living day to day with it now, a person who deals with it day to day, and giving you my insight on what to do. I hope this has been helpful to you guys, and just God bless you and your loved ones. Stick by them. It's a day to day struggle. I know it's not easy. And any questions, ask. And I'm happy to answer them. All right, guys. Take care. Love you all. Bye.